It was a battle of generations, a clash of ideologies. On one side stood Bret the Hitman Hart, a man who embodied everything traditional wrestling fans held dear: technical excellence, honor, and respect for the business. On the other, a rising force named Stone Cold Steve Austin, an unapologetic, beer-drinking, foul-mouthed brawler who represented the future of professional wrestling. Their rivalry would not only change their own careers, it would reshape the very fabric of WWE itself. And at WrestleMania 13, the world would witness one of the greatest matches of all time. The seeds of this war were planted in 1996. After ruling WWE as a 5-time champion, Bret Hart had stepped away following his crushing defeat to Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12. Meanwhile, the landscape was shifting. The era of clean-cut heroes was fading, and new stars were emerging, none louder than Stone Cold Steve Austin. Austin, fresh off his King of the Ring victory in June 1996, had begun making waves with his now iconic speech. He says, "You sit there, and you thump your Bible, and you say your prayers, and it didn't get you anywhere. Talk about your Psalms. Talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says, I just whipped your ass." The fans took notice, but Austin wasn't satisfied with just turning heads. He wanted to take down the best. He wanted Bret Hart. For weeks, Austin mocked Hart, calling him soft, accusing him of running from a real fight. The insults worked. When Hart finally returned in October 1996, he accepted Austin's challenge for Survivor Series. He says, "Steve Austin, if you're the best wrestler in the World Wrestling Federation, then you're going to have to prove it to me." The battleground was set. Madison Square Garden, Austin versus Hart, was everything fans hoped for. Hart's technical brilliance collided with Austin's raw aggression. The two warriors countered and punished each other, telling a masterclass in psychology. In the final moments, Austin locked in the $1 Million Dream submission hold, but Bret, a veteran of the ring, used the turnbuckle to push off and roll backward, pinning Austin's shoulders to the mat. Bret had won, but Steve Austin had not been beaten. If anything, the match cemented Austin as a legitimate threat. He was brash, he was relentless, he was dangerous, and he wasn't done with Bret Hart. Their next confrontation came on January 19, 1997, at the Royal Rumble. Austin entered at number 5 and tore through the competition. But when Bret finally arrived, the Hitman made sure Austin wouldn't last. He eliminated Austin, but the referees were distracted by another fight outside the ring. Austin saw the opportunity, slithered back in unnoticed, and illegally won the Rumble by eliminating the Hitman. Bret was furious. For years, he had built his legacy on hard work and honor, yet here was a man cutting corners and cheating his way to the top. And worse, the fans were starting to cheer for him. Their next clash came at In Your House Final 4, where Bret won the vacant WWF Championship in a brutal match against Austin, The Undertaker, and Vader. But his reign was short-lived. The next night on Monday Night Raw, Austin cost Hart the title against Psycho Sid, attacking him mid-match. That was the moment Bret Hart snapped. Bret stormed the ring and did something fans had never seen before. He shoved Vince McMahon to the ground and went on an expletive-laden rant about being screwed by the WWF. He says, "Everybody in that dressing room knows that I won that match." But when it comes to the WWF and the way they treat Bret Hart, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. "I'm just a goddamn nobody," Austin interrupted, mocking Hart's complaints. He says, "You sit there and cry like a baby. You talk about being screwed. Well, Bret, you're nothing but a loser." The crowd was turning on Bret Hart, and at the same time, they were rallying behind Steve Austin. The stage was set for a final showdown at WrestleMania 13. The match was a submission match, and there would be no pinfalls, no disqualifications, only victory by making your opponent quit. To officiate, WWE brought in a special guest referee, UFC legend Ken Shamrock. From the opening bell, it was chaos. Austin and Bret brawled into the crowd, through the announce tables, and around the ring. The match was a war, not a wrestling contest. Then came the moment that defined an era. Bret Hart slammed Austin's head with the ring bell, busting him open. Blood poured down Austin's face as Bret targeted the wound. The crowd, once firmly behind Bret, began to shift. Austin, drenched in blood, refused to quit. Even as the Hitman locked in the sharpshooter, Austin screamed in agony. But he never tapped. The image of Austin, teeth clenched, blood dripping down his face, struggling to survive, would become one of the most iconic visuals in wrestling history. Finally, his body gave out. Austin passed out in a pool of his own blood. Ken Shamrock called for the bell. Bret Hart wins via referee stoppage. But the match wasn't over. As Austin lay unconscious, Bret continued the assault, stomping on his lifeless body. The crowd erupted in boos. They had seen enough. Bret Hart had turned his back on them, and Steve Austin, despite losing, had won their respect. When Austin finally woke up, he refused help. He staggered to his feet, blood covering his face, and stumbled up the ramp. The fans stood and cheered. It was the night the wrestling world changed forever. Bret Hart was now a full-fledged heel, leading the Anti-American Heart Foundation and embracing the boos. Steve Austin, despite never officially turning face, became WWE's most beloved star. His defiance, his grit, and his unwillingness to quit resonated with fans everywhere. Their match at WrestleMania 13 is still regarded as one of the greatest of all time, not just for its brutality, but for its storytelling. More than a match, it was a turning point. It launched Austin to superstardom, set the stage for the Attitude Era, and changed WWE history forever. This wasn't just a rivalry. This was wrestling's defining moment. Though once fierce rivals, today Bret Hart and Steve Austin share mutual respect and friendship. Both have praised each other over the years, Bret calling Austin one of his toughest opponents, and Austin crediting Bret for elevating his career, especially through their iconic WrestleMania 13 match. Time has healed old wounds, and they now enjoy reminiscing about their legendary battles. And while the war is over, its impact lives on, inspiring generations of fans and wrestlers alike.